In this experiment, the length of a metal rod at 10 degrees C was measured. The rod was then heated to a higher temperature and the increase in length was recorded. The variables now need to be plotted on a graph. To do this, you'll need to know which variable goes on which axis. The independent variable goes on the horizontal or x-axis, and the dependent variable goes on the vertical or y-axis. Planning of the graph is an important step. You'll need the usual equipment, of course, but you will also need to plan the scales on your graph. The scale for each axis should be linear, that is, each square should represent the same quantity, so one square on your scale should equal the same amount as any other square. To determine the quantity each square should represent, finding out two things is helpful. The first is finding the range for your independent and dependent variables. To do this, find the minimum and maximum values for each variable in your results table. We find the range by subtracting the minimum from the maximum value. To determine the scale, start with the horizontal axis. If you are using graph paper, let 1 unit on the graph paper equal 1 unit of the values you are graphing. Determine whether the greatest value will fit on the graph. If it doesn't, then change the scale and try again. Now repeat this process for the vertical scale. Once you have determined your scales, you number the axes, add labels and units, a title, and then plot the points on the graph. Find the values of the independent and dependent variables, and where they intersect, mark a small cross with a sharp pencil. Continue this process for all your recorded values. You can do 3 things really with your points once you've plotted them. The first is to do absolutely nothing. The second is to join the points up using a straight line between points. This is called a point-to-point line. And then the third is to draw a line of best fit. So the question is, when do I draw a line or curve of best fit, and when do I do a point-to-point? To decide if you should draw a line of best fit, try asking yourself another question. Does drawing a point somewhere in between the others you have plotted make any sense? For example, here is a graph of the melting points of the elements in group 3 of the periodic table. Does it make sense to put a point in between magnesium and aluminium, say? The answer is no, because there are no elements between them. There is no element between magnesium and aluminium, so it makes absolutely no sense for us to put a point there. Ultimately, you should really seek guidance from your teacher, and they'll be able to advise you of which is the best thing to do with the graph that you're drawing for your particular experiment. So if in doubt, seek advice.